What's up? You know what's up? Let me fill you in the T emotion. Emotion is a complex experience that begins with a stimulus and has psychological responses with emotional feeling and an emotional expression. Expression is an outward sign of someone's feelings. There is an emotion. There is the Plunkin psychoevolutionary theory. Basically says that it categorizes emotions into eight basic emotions: fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, anticipation, joy, and trust. And then after that, it branches out into more specific, into intensity, depending on highest and lower intensity. Here's a little chart tells about these basic ones. But then the early theories in motion. I have to sneeze so bad. Ah, my goodness. Okay, role. What do we learn? Why we sneeze? Role of emotional. Okay, I'm sorry. So different emotional theories. There's the common sense theory, which basically says there's a stimulus monster. Then you feel the fear, you feel the emotion, and then you feel the autonomic response. And then there's the James Lang theory, which I remember as the jump laugh, because you jump first and then you laugh. So there's a monster, and then there's the autonomic response, and then you feel the fear. There's a cannon bar theory. I think there's a canyon, and you should them both at the same time. The autonomic and the fear, which basically says that they're both happening at the same time. The Schwarzschild theory talks how there's the autonomic response, and you cognitively interpret it, and then you feel the fear. Um, there's the two-factor theory, which is the Schwarzschild's one. There is the opponent process theory, which is when one emotion is on, the other one has to be turned off. Spillover effect on how your emotion carries over with time and people. So if you're mad at someone, you're gonna be mad at someone else. The serious cognitive appraisal theory talks how you interpret the event and then determine your experience. Facial feedback. Basically, facial feedback hypothesis says that how our face can make us feel pretty. It can make us feel happy or sad or whatever. Um, there's positive emotion, which is the left hemisphere, and negative emotion, which is the right hemisphere. The current which is an emotion. So basically, right now, the most current thing. There is a discrete emotion theory, which is that there is a set number of biological state of emotional shared by everyone. Everyone shares the same amount of emotions, such as happiness, sad, blah blah blah. Everyone can identify the emotion, and it can be labeled with empirical data. Bartha and Russell created the psychological constructivism, which they basically see emotion as a complex perception that is made in the mind on everyone based on the sensory input and prior assumptions. Conceptuality of the emotion emerges from this, which is why we label the emotions. Emotional intelligence says that we're able to label, interpret, fix, deal with emotions. Emotion in the body basically talks about emotion in the body. We interpret emotions as the brain and psychological shows them. So neurology and emotion. The nervous system plays the big part. The autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system shows when we're mad, when we're sad, when we're scared. The central nervous system has many parts in the process. Our reticular formation shows process to awareness. Limbic system processes emotion. Blah blah blah. Amygdala danger. Okay. Emotional expressions. There are many ways to show emotion. Babies depend on them. That's the way to survive. There's the nonverbal communication, aka NVC. You show emotions via body language, non-verbally. Ekman and Friston um, looked at every muscle and facial coordination to develop the facial action coding system, the FACS. The FACS is basically a tool to identify the facial movement depending on the actual emotion, and this basically shows how people actually like are emotionally. Display basically shows when to show emotional dependent. That's more in culture. Um, Micro expression is the momentary and involuntary expressions that show true emotion. So, for example, when you actually smile, you're gonna like smile, which is you're gonna like the eye things. Polygraphs, as aka lie detectors, are completely baloney. They were Galvanic skin response, which see like stresses in the skin. People express emotions through body language. There's a bunch of different things. There's posture and stance, which is emotional stage. Kinesics, which is gestures and movements. During conversations, certain movements correspond to certain emotions. Example, anger, stuff like that. Proximity, basically, it says how close you are to someone. It shows how much you actually want to deal with them. So, like, there's depending on the culture, it also changes. There's the intimate, which would be 1.5 feet, personal, which would be 4 feet, social, which would be 12 feet, and public, which would be 25 feet. Paralanguage is non-linguistic properties of speech. For example, pitch, which and speech rate shows emotions. For example, when you're really mad, you're gonna be like, but then when you're like nervous, you're gonna be talking like blah, 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 blah. Text and the pictorial expressions shows pictures, showing emotional and something. Almost like this. Stress, health, and coping. Health psychology. A field that studies psychology in terms of health, illnesses, and um, healthcare. Stress is basically the mental and psychological conditions that happens when someone has to adapt to the environment because of the demands and expectations. The stress is bad, but um, eustress is good. Stressors are conditions and events in the environment that challenges or threatens a person. They're basically a bunch of hassles that like stress you. They could be either good or bad depending on how you interpret them. Frustrations are low intensity stressors. External frustration is when environment prevents you from reaching a goal. External frustration is an environment externally is preventing you. There's a personal frustration is when you yourself are limiting from reaching your goal. There's traumatic stressor, which is when a traumatic event, unexpected, makes you unable to do things or stresses you. Respond to stress. We respond to stress independently, differently from everybody else. The first step to react with a stressor, there's a primary appraisal, which is the stressor relevant? Like, do I have to give a shit about this? Then the second appraisal, which is resources available to deal with it. So what do I have to do with this bitch? Some people react through aggression and aversion towards other. This is called others do displaced aggression, which is when you get mad towards object, aka punching walls. Um, Others escape, which is removing oneself from the situation, which is what I usually do. Others lead to drugs. Others learned helplessness, which is when you feel like um, it's basically when you feel like you're gonna feel bad forever and you're gonna never feel better. People, when they're depressed, they feel this. Um, Hans Selye basically created the general adaptation syndrome, which is GAS. The three stages of responding to stressors. First, you are alarmed, which is you appraise and mobilize resources. Then you resisted, which is you coped with it, and then you are exhausted. Your energy is gone, and your coping is gone. I think of it as like gas. You're holding in a fart, and first you're like, "Oh my god, I have to fart," so I have to like have to hold everything in my power to hold it in. That will be alarm. Resistant, you're holding it in the most that you can, and then you have to let it go. It has to. You have to fart. You could be burnt out, which is a physical and mental and emotional exhaustion. Biological or chronic stress. Talked about stress of reaction. Autonomic nervous system response to the stressors. Um, Leads to fight or flight response. We talked about that. Hypothalamic pituitary adrenaline axis, or HPA axis. It's basically the body's response to stress. The amygdala, hypothalamus, and pituitary gland release adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, which is stress hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline, prepare for the body for fight or flight. Coping with stress and stressors. We talked about some types of coping, but now specific amount of coping. Coping exactly is dealing with stressors specifically over a long period of time. When people can't cope with chronic stress, they are anxious, depressed, apathetic. They get irritated easily, which it includes avoiding completely whatever. Self-defeating fears and attitudes make coping hard. For example, if someone criticizes me, that means that something's wrong with me. That's what people who are self-conscious think, which you shouldn't be. Great. Albert Einstein, okay, I wish Albert Ellis said that if people make an unrealistic world, it'll be harder to deal with stressors. Um, Varieties of coping with stress. There's emotional focused coping, which is controlling, changing. Sorry, I like died. There's emotional focused coping, which basically deals with controlling, changing, negative emotions towards stressors. So you're changing the emotion towards the negative stressors. There's problem focused coping, which is adding a solution to deal with this, and then there's appraisal focused coping, which is putting a different spin to the stressor for so then Meyer and so okay, emotional focused coping would be um if you are in a fight, you just walk away. Problem focus would be if you're in a fight, you're gonna talk to them, you're gonna find a resolution, and then appraisal focus would be saying, you know what, you could be fighting with me, but I never liked you in the first place. Type A personality basically is someone that's like super chill, super relaxed. I'm lying to you. Type A personality is me, literally the person that I am. If you picture type A is me. Type B personality would be someone that's like super like relaxed, super like nonchalant. Like, I don't give a shit about life. I'll be like Naomi basically. The C's prompt personality is always pissy and down, and anxious. Self-healing personality is someone that's always happy, looks toward the bright side. Life changing and lifestyle health. Holmes, some two dudes, basically created light changes units or LCU, which is a light changing in correlation to stress levels. How if you wipe eyes, how stressed are you supposed to be? Lifestyles basically help people respond to the environment and go to the daily life. Doing extreme things in your life that will decrease the stress level. For example, you're supposed to have 3 meals a day, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, things that we don't do. Lifestyle disease, illnesses, blah blah blah. Strategies to managing stress, please. Healthy lifestyle strategies for relief stress. Guidelines imagery, which is visualizing and calming relaxing things, and then there's stress. Inoculation, which is positive coping statements. Training programs promoting. There's some programs that make you feel better in community health. There's some programs in the community that makes you happy. One more unit, guys.